Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer with you guys. Just going to share my screen and bring up a chart. We're just looking at Neptune today, guys. So just some points that I'd like to highlight around Neptune getting ready to move direct on the 28th of November. So if you see this chart that I've got on the screen, this is for today, the 26th of November, 2019, and you can see Neptune down here in the fourth house, and it has a red R, 15 degrees of Pisces, 55 minutes retrograde. Now, if I animate this chart, which is just one of the functions of this particular software, if we go to the following day, you can see that, sorry about the noise, again, I live in a very busy area. The following day, you can see that there's an S there, okay, which basically means that Neptune it's literally just stopped in its tracks. It's stopped getting ready to move direct. So that's what happens to planets when they either go direct or retrograde. They move out of either a direct or retrograde motion into a still motion, dead still, and then they proceed to either stationary direct or stationary retrograde. In this case, it's stationary retrograde. If we go forward again, you see the S has changed into a black color, which means there's movement. And if we proceed forward again another day, then it's really on the 29th of November where Neptune is completely direct. But the 28th of November is where it begins, you could say. So just a little bit of technical matters there. So, I mean, the first thing to, I suppose, just highlight is that Neptune is a very slow-moving body, second slowest moving body after Pluto. So Neptune has a cycle of, 165 years, 165 years to travel around your entire birth chart. Long time, right? So we don't live to see or experience Neptune transiting around our entire chart. That means that Neptune spends approximately 14 years in each house, in each part of the birth chart. It's a long cycle, obviously, and in addition to that, what you will have is Neptune will obviously form aspects to the planets in your birth chart. Okay, so this could be you right now. You could have you could be a Pisces sun or a Pisces moon or a Mercury in Pisces or Mars in Pisces or Venus in Pisces. And as a result, depending on whether you have any of those planets, depending on what degree those planets are in, if it's 1, 2, 3 degrees, then you've already had the transit. But if any of your personal planets are around about 15 degrees, then you have Neptune conjunct your personal planets at the moment, one of them, and or opposite as well, and or square. So these transits from Neptune are incredibly powerful, and they can be very problematic and very difficult because the nature of Neptune is such that it correlates to, first of all, it correlates to the ultimate divine source creation to all things. It's pure divinity, pure divine energy. So it's the one source that really has absolutely nothing in common to a degree, to a very large degree, to this physical, dense reality that we live in. So the energy of Neptune, when it's translated or interpreted or perceived through this version of reality, there can be a number of distortions that arise: confusion, illusion, disillusionment, disappointment, and so forth. And that's basically because Neptune holds within it. If it holds everything, it encapsulates, embodies absolutely everything. It's the ruler of Pisces, the ruler of the 12th house in the birth chart, the natural order of the zodiac, that is. And therefore, so it encapsulates everything, and all the universes and all the galaxies and absolutely everything. You can imagine how much is contained within the vibration of Neptune. So the other component of Neptune is that because it is that of divine um, essence, then the the relationship we generally have to Neptune is that describes our our dreams and our ideals of perhaps how we want our life to be, or how we wish life to be, or how we want the world to be, or how we wish the world to be. So it draws in from very deep within us all these dreams and wishes and ideals that we have of the perfect life or perfect world as we think we want it to be, need it to be, wish it to be. And the next comment I'm about to make is hard to accept at times, um, but and you really do need to step out of the left brain field to make a possible connection, understanding and understanding to this comment, and that is that despite the despite all the challenges in this world and the chaos and the evil behaviors and the projected evil behaviors and actions and things, and all the terrible things that we witness or experience or observe, it's all happening in divine order, believe it or not. It's very difficult to accept that at times. Even for me, I still struggle with that at times. But when I'm able to go into a space within my own heart, my own soul, where I vibrate at a much higher rate, where my higher self would stand or sit, um, then I am able to make those connections, to have that larger view, perspective, and understanding of the totality of all things. And the totality is contained within the vibration of Neptune. We do live in a world of polarities and duality. So we have to have all these different polarities and experiences of duality, because that's the dimension we live in. And that is just purely at the heart and core of evolution and divine source creation to all things, birthing and projecting itself out as consciousness through every single soul, every single human being, every single animal, every single thing that we see and experience. There's consciousness in everything. It may appear to be that there's no consciousness in a person who performs a really evil act. And indeed, that person, we could say, is operating from very unconscious forces that are quite dark. We all have these darker realms within us, and um, light forces and light bodies and lighter shades within us as well. We all have a free will to also exercise how we wish to grow, evolve, learn, develop, the actions we choose to take, and so on and so forth. So it's just important to understand these sorts of points about Neptune to try and grasp what's going on, for example, when Neptune goes retrograde. So getting back to the main point at hand, Neptune stays retrograde for about half of the year. So it went retrograde 22nd of June 2019. So from June until now, we've all been under the influence of Neptune being retrograde. And there's a lot of things I could say about that, but I don't want to make this an overly long presentation, so I'm just going to make some main points. The first thing is Neptune retrograde, believe it or not, actually can operate quite well, because its nature is such that it is it's so deep within us, so deep within our psychic structures. It connects to sleep, to dreams, to altered states of reality. So the waking sort of state of consciousness that we experience on a day-to-day basis, that's not Neptune. That's Saturn, and you could say the sun as well, of course. But Neptune takes us into these other dimensions, into these other realities. My favorite quote by Rob Hand is this, that let me just see if I can remember it. Yes, it sounds like it's just a wonderful way that he's put this. Anyway, I'll just say the quote. So Saturn is the illusion. That's right. Saturn is the illusion that there's only one reality, and Neptune is the reality that there are many. So that spins the words reality and illusion in a different way, because normally we associate illusion with Neptune and reality with Saturn, right? But this quote just spins them in the complete opposite directions purposely. And it's just simply saying that because of Saturn's dense structural layers of how it creates um, our social sort of conscious on a day-to-day basis, it can be so dense through all the layers that it creates, all those structures, that it limits us to thinking or believing that this is it, that this is the only reality, and it's not. And it is Neptune that has that ability to open us up to the vastness of infinite consciousness, which then includes a number of different realities and experiences outside of the physical body. When you go to sleep every night and you enter different altered states of consciousness, one being sleep, where you have dreams, you go into the dream realm, you access the astral body, the etheric body. This is all Neptune's domain. So we are dealing with this Neptune vibration every time we go to sleep, really. So when Neptune goes retrograde, because the 12th house, which is ruled by Neptune, and Pisces, correlates to the experience of what resides within us at the deepest unconscious levels, which also correlates to pretty much every single life we have lived. So when Neptune goes retrograde, we go into this realm, whether we are conscious of it or not, where we access the unconscious components. Sometimes that can be a wonderful experience, and sometimes that can be terrifying, because it depends what you are accessing, what material you're accessing, whether you are ready to work through that, to feel it, to experience it in some kind of way, to see it, to understand it. So because it has that capacity to go into those deep inner unconscious components within us, and therefore access this material, as I said, it can be a positive experience and it can be a challenging experience. It just depends on who you are, what else is going on in your life, what's going on with your birth chart, etc., etc. So Neptune correlates to our spiritualized self, or our spiritualized life, or spiritualized consciousness. The desire to want to integrate spiritually, the desire to want to understand divinity, to taste it, to feel it, to connect to it. That's where Neptune takes us. And because Neptune has this enormous capacity for imagination and visualization, when it goes retrograde, it accentuates our imagination and our visualization abilities. It expands them. So we go into the last 6 months, that's what we've been doing collectively and individually. We've been accessing material that belongs to the unconscious components of who we are and who we've been and who we are becoming. And it's taken us further into what's the truth versus what's not real or what's not truthful. And this is where it can get tricky with Neptune. And a viewer asked a really great question, actually, and I just hope I can remember exactly how she asked it. And I hope you are listening, because this is to answer your question. She asked a question about Neptune and how do we know when we are accessing truth or connecting to truth, because of Neptune's nature being so tricky. Tricky is not really the right word. Tricky is more, it correlates to Mercury. Mercury was the trickster, and that was part of this person's question. She said, how can we tell the difference between what's real, what's true, versus what isn't? And how is that different from, the Mercury component of us getting tricked into things? Well, the Mercury component of deception and tricking people and things like that is more like the thief that will go and pickpocket, and he'll just do it in such a clever way, and his hands are so quick and his fingers are so light. That's a Mercury type of act, really. And just sort of speaking information that's not completely accurate or not completely honest, and sort of jumping from one thing to the other and making up stories, and that's a Mercury trickster type of energy or expression, manifestation. With Neptune, when it comes to falseness and what's not truth, it is more born out of confusion. So, if you have an example, if you have Neptune conjunct your Mercury, that could typically be a period of about a year, quite possibly, where, yes, on a mental level with regards to your imagination, when you read, your writing, your dream journal, your the things that you are interested in from a learning level will be filtered through Neptune, right? So there's a lot of wonderful things that can come out of that experience, especially when it comes to creative writing, just because of the sheer power of imagination that can be broken open during that time. On the other hand, because Neptune is an energy, when it's penetrated into the physical, it seems to um, come through very strongly in a glamorized way. That's the lower vibration of Neptune, comes through glamour. The world of glamour, Hollywood, um, you know, movie stars, all that stuff that we see out there. Marilyn Monroe, she was a classic Neptune figure. That's the Neptune glamorized uh, version of Neptune coming through that creates this, smoke and mirrors illusion, of what we want to perceive as ideal and beautiful and perfect and so on and so forth. And it's not really. It's all just kind of made to look in a particular way. It's appearances that can be very misleading and are not founded in truth, right? Such as an actor who, gets completely done up for a particular scene. When you see that same person waking up in the morning, do they look like that? No, they don't. No one does. In reality, that's just how it is. So that's Neptune gets projected out on that glamorized sort of level. Um, so going back to when Neptune is retrograde, we have this enormous capacity to access these deeper layers and levels of truth that we normally don't have access to on a day-to-day basis and when Neptune is direct. So now that Neptune is moving into the direct motion for the next 6 months, really what we're looking at is whatever our unconscious self has been working through over the last 6 months, which can be a number of different things pertaining to one's spiritual life, because Neptune connects to our spiritual devotion. It can be sacrifice, literally sacrifice for the world, for others, with the uh, uh, with the intention of goodness behind it. Well, at least it should be with Neptune. So whatever we have been accessing and working through unconsciously over the last 6 months, and that can be through dreams you've been having, that can be through different material that's cropped up somewhere in your consciousness that maybe has been uncomfortable, maybe has been really confronting. There's a number of different possibilities, because the unconscious undercurrents, which is where Neptune goes when it goes retrograde, um, it it it's susceptible and open and receptive to everything that's going on there. So if you think about the ocean and the iceberg, on the surface of the water, that's that small little iceberg. That's us on a day-to-day basis. That's more or less where we are operating from. And that ocean, that infinite, vast ocean below the iceberg, is the rest of what reflects who we are. So there is so much contained within us, but it is mostly unconscious. And the problem with the unconscious realms is that when we have enormous resistance, and when we are not willing to become conscious of things, not everything, because nothing, we can't become conscious of everything all at once. It's a ridiculous notion. It takes lifetimes. That's why we have this process of evolution, because we work through little chunks, through little bits and pieces throughout every different incarnation. So depending on who you are, where you're at, what's going on in your life right now, what age you're at, all these personal factors and details that describe you and your life, that's what's going to shape what the experience of Neptune going retrograde means for you. What material are you accessing? What parts of the unconscious components within you are you accessing? Are you ready to work on, to realize? So when Neptune is retrograde, our receptivity is so subtle to emotional undercurrents, and it's extremely heightened and intensified, and increasing psychic sensitivity happens as well. So don't be surprised if you've been having prophetic dreams, or moments where you have these clairvoyant, psychic type of experiences, visions, recognizing things that don't make sense in the everyday sort of world, but making these deeper sort of connections and links from the unconscious coming up to your conscious everyday life, as it were. If Neptune is forming a hard aspect to one of your personal planets, then this retrograde period can be quite challenging, because it can be very difficult to objectively separate and recognize one plane of consciousness from the other. So it can be difficult to recognize what's actually happening, what's real and what isn't. And that's where the confusion can come in. And that can, speak to a relationship that you're in. That can be, in a personal, professional relationship. That can be in a number of different ways. Neptune's nature is introspective, and it basically, it takes a very deep withdrawal when it's retrograde. So this is what's more or less been going on for all of us the last 6 months. Um, now, it also, Neptune, whether retrograde or direct, but specifically when it is retrograde, because it connects to the unconscious material within us that pertains to countless of incarnations, it accesses, memories, a lot of different memories, impressions, dreams, and ideals that can be speaking to this life for you, what you're becoming more aware of or wanting to integrate and synthesize into your life, what you are waking up to. And it can also be connected to previous lifetimes as well. The thing about Neptune is that the other reason it's very elusive, and sorry, let me just go back to the question that the viewer asked. How do you know when something is truth or truthful? Look, the fact is this: if you've got transiting Neptune on one of your personal planets, um, let's just say the moon, for example, you Neptune undermines the ego structure. Okay, so those parts of your life that you see as 100% real, as predictable, as your reality, well, when Neptune comes along, it just washes all that away because Neptune dissolves whatever it touches. So part of the experience of when Neptune goes within through its retrograde period, it's looking at all these internal psychological structures that you have in place, and it's dissolving psychological structures that are potentially unhealthy for you and are not enabling you to actually connect to deeper levels of truth. So, but if Neptune is conjunct your moon via transit, then your your fundamental um, safety and level of feeling safe, emotionally safe, is under some kind of threat in some kind of way because Neptune dissolves those boundaries that you've created around you. So you are suddenly really open and vulnerable and sensitive and um, very emotional, and emotional triggers and heightened, all that sort of stuff comes up. I mean, at the same time, you can have emotional, blissful little moments and experiences that you could just be sitting in a park somewhere and just feeling the grass beneath your feet and just observing the absolute glorious beauty of nature. And with the moon Neptune transit, you'll just be in this blissful state of ecstasy. It's bliss in a way, right? In a very simple way, just with nature, for instance. On the other hand, Neptune can be that archetype that brings agony and bliss. The agony comes in because of the glamorized expectations that we project onto things or people, situations. And when that thing or situation or person cannot live up to that Neptune ideal and glamour that you've projected onto it or him or her, then the agony sets in because the disappointment sweeps you up. So this is where Neptune can get really tricky. So when you're having Neptune transits on personal planets, um, it is sometimes difficult to navigate your way through what's real and what isn't. And you have to be a lot more, as much as you possibly can be, a lot more sort of on guard, in tune, on top of things. You can't take it for granted because you can get swept away in this ocean and just get completely lost. And you'll just be swimming around in this ocean and you'll have no anchor, right? It's like you're in this little boat floating around and you don't know where the hell you are and you don't know what is going on. You don't know where safety is. You don't know what's real and what isn't because you've got no anchor in your boat to anchor yourself somewhere and center yourself, right? It's a little bit like that. So Neptune, transiting Neptune to personal planets can be very tricky when it comes to the matter of truth. But what I would say further to that, and this comment I'm about to make, I would also say for when Neptune is either direct or retrograde, just the matter of what's truth to you. The first thing is that if you try to understand truth from your thinking, from your left brain, you'll never get there because you'll always find something else that will debate it, dispute it, negate it, so on and so forth. There'll always be another perspective, another version, another meaning, etc., etc., etc. That's the function of the left brain to, to frame things, right? To classify them. That's just the nature of the left brain, Gemini, Mercury. It is when we access our right brain, which is where our intuition is, Sagittarius, ninth house, intuition, where we synthesize naturally because we have this inner understanding and inner knowing. There's no, the seeking of truth that is explored and found and discovered and experienced through intuition, right brain, is not a question, a journey of questions. It's Gemini that asks all the questions, and that has its place. But if you want to access truth from the deeper, higher dimensions within you, you have to go into your intuition, the faculty of intuition, and find the connection through that. The minute your left brain comes into that, it will start to ask the questions of, but what if this, but what if that, but so-and-so said this, but she said that, but that teacher said that, but he said that, and so on and so forth. And it's never ending. So you have to, truth is inherently within you. And you have to turn within your own self to connect with that, to capture that, to build that intuition so that it becomes so potent and so reliable because it's you are nurturing it. I don't know if every single person has intuition. Maybe they do. I can't say yes or no. Sometimes it's a question that gets asked: can everybody be intuitive? Perhaps to some capacity, yes, everybody can. Are there people that are more naturally intuitive? Absolutely, absolutely, and that's reflected through their birth chart. Sagittarius is the archetype of intuition, ninth house, Jupiter. Neptune, Pisces, also connects to intuition, just in a different way. The Neptune Pisces can, because it's so out of this world, and it gets projected through the glamorized level. That's where the confusion comes in. As I said, we have this projected ideal. It's like meeting somebody that you really like and you want to have a relationship with them. And, they're amazing and you're amazing and everything's amazing and blah, blah, blah. And there's this is under a Neptune transit, right? I'm speaking about. And you see that person as, let's just say you're a man and it's a woman. You project the goddess energy onto the woman. It's all Neptune. Project that Neptune completely onto her. So she's this incredible goddess in your eyes. She's amazing. She can't do anything wrong. She's perfect, virtually. And who could live up to that? What human being can live up to such a high ideal and expectation? I don't think anyone can. That's the problem. So this is where we've got to be really careful when it comes to Neptune. We've got to be in touch with truth within our heart and soul and our higher self. And we've got to be careful about what we are projecting onto others and therefore the expectations we have around that. So again, to answer that question, how do you know what's truthful? I think it's a way of discovering and understanding more of yourself. Because in truth, um, truth is not outside of yourself. You're not going to find it out there. The connections you make with people out there, the teachers, the readings you may have, the therapy sessions, the tarot cards, guided angel readings, whatever it is you are having, all those experiences they can be so beautiful, they can be amazing, and they can go incredibly wrong sometimes too. Again, that depends on expectations, projection, ideals, confusion, etc., etc. But fundamentally, all those external experiences where people give you some guidance or point to something, they are all pointers. You will always have to come back to your own center and rely on what feels right for you, what feels truth to you. The truth is within you, just like the kingdom of heaven is within you, within all of us. Jesus is not outside, up there sitting above some cloud, uh, flying through the clouds and returning back to earth to save us. Jesus is within us, within our heart. And for those of you that don't believe Jesus, it could be Shiva, it could be Krishna, it could be Allah, it could be Buddha, whoever it is that you feel a connection with. All those archetypal figures, they all live within us, within our own consciousness. So this is how you get back to truth. You must come back to your own self. Who was it? Socrates. I think it was Socrates, or I've just forgotten the other name, that said, "Know thyself." Know thyself. He didn't say know others to find out who you are. He said, know thyself. So our journey of truth and discovery is our own personal journey. And everything that we see outside of ourselves is a projection of our own consciousness and what we project consciously in order to experience, in order to grow and evolve. So it's not a case of having this mental judgment of what's right, wrong, truth, and false, because that's just the left brain linear um, faculty of consciousness that needs to frame things and label them and make them right or wrong, good or bad, etc., etc. If we want to access truth, we just have to simply go within our own self and feeling it. I think the emotional body, the etheric body where all the chakras are, and there's literally thousands of chakras really in truth, but there's certain systems. The most traditional system has 7 chakras, and then there are other systems that have come into play that have 15, 24, and more. So again, it just depends what you are working with and so forth. But regardless of whether you're working with 3,000 chakras or 7 chakras, those chakras are very strong energy centers that connect to various different levels of our life and experiences of life as well. But also emotionally, what we're holding in our solar plexus area, what we hold there in that solar plexus area and in the heart chakra center, those centers, they need to be constantly cleared as well. Because if we have lived a life where we have been completely unconscious, completely unaware, and we've just had all these layers of things pile up on our spiritual body, which blocks our intuition, which maybe suppresses our emotional intelligence, our emotional function. We have all this debris, right? It's like it's spiritual debris, layers upon layers upon layers. Well, it's a lot more difficult to access the truth within you when you've got a shitload of layers all over you of stuff that's either been false or painful, or whatever the case may be. We have to constantly purify, cleanse, in order to get to be more centered, to be more aligned, to connect to truth within our own self. And Neptune is all about this stuff that I'm talking about, because Neptune takes us into these subtle levels and vibrations and existences and experiences. So moving forward, going direct in a couple of days' time, what we can potentially look to as we're moving forward regarding Neptune matters in our life, which is our dreams, our spiritualized self and life, how we connect psychically and spiritually with people around us, people we want to connect with, how we improve and grow spiritually and open up, all those things. Our visualizations and dreams and imagination, all these things we've been working on. Well, now that Neptune is going direct, we can actually, it's like a little window opens up, and now you get this different level of perspective, because there's been all this inner work going on in these very deep unconscious layers. And whatever has been worked through for you, whatever you've needed to work through, whatever you have been able to work through up until this point, connecting to spiritual components of your life and consciousness, and or your dreams and ideals and imagination and what you wish to create with that on this magnificent earth plane that we live on. Well, now you're going to start seeing it in a different way, because Neptune's moving direct. So a window opens up, and what comes through is whatever has been clarified and cleared for you while Neptune was retrograde. Now you start to see things from a different window. You start to put things into a different perspective moving forward. Dreams become more actualized, as it were, because now the dreams that you have within are now going to be externalized and actualized. So this is what we step forward into with Neptune moving direct, fundamentally. Okay, let me just see if I've more or less covered. The other thing, another point I just want to make, as I said, when Neptune is retrograde, we are a lot more susceptible to the emotional, the darker emotional contents of our unconscious self. We can also be more susceptible and receptive to the lighter shades, but we can equally be susceptible to the darker emotional content. This is while Neptune is retrograde, right? So on the one hand, whilst it can be amazing for spiritual advancement, spiritual receptivity and openness, seeing things that are just beyond what your left brain could even begin to describe, making connections and synchronicities, and understanding things in ways that are just even difficult to articulate. So you have that experience, whilst at the same time you can be tapping into some darker content that resides in your unconscious, which can be challenging, as I said. But when Neptune moves direct, because the focus becomes externalized, there's it's not as intense on those levels, because there's a resistance. When Neptune is moving direct, there's a resistance, an automatic resistance, that it's like something just goes into place, and just acts as a barrier of resistance when Neptune is moving direct, and it just stops, as it were, or acts as a barricade, a barricade of not allowing any more unconscious material to come through, right? It just sort of puts it to a pause, if you like, for a while. It gives you that opportunity while Neptune is direct to now move forward into those things that you are ready to step into pertaining to what you have worked through in the last 6 months when it comes to actualizing your dreams. Okay. And just another comment I'd like to make as well. Because Neptune accesses or has the capacity to access a lot of material that's stored in your unconscious, which can go into many different lifetimes, the thing to try and understand around that is we can get caught up in past material that doesn't allow for growth to move. It doesn't allow us to sort of move forward and grow. We can get sort of trapped and in an over idealized past sort of situation or experience, and that can be the very thing that basically prevents the opportunity for new inner growth in the present sort of moment, in the present incarnation, or in the present moment. So it's, I mean, yeah, look, it's not easy to work that out, but it is an important point, because that's what Neptune retrograde can do, and that also can be the case when your natal Neptune is retrograde, which is going to be, about half of the people on the planet, because Neptune's retrograde for half the year, right? So half of us have it retrograde, the other half don't. Okay, I think I'll leave it there. I think that's enough points for you guys to perhaps consider, have a think about, and see how that connects with you and how that may speak to you, your personal life, your personal circumstances, and where you are at now on your evolutionary path. It's pretty amazing for us to have, Neptune in Pisces in our lifetime, because, the last time Neptune was in Pisces was 165 years ago. So it's it's a really special time, actually. Neptune rules Pisces. So I really feel that, and Neptune's only halfway through Pisces, so we still have about another 7 or 8 years left of Neptune in Pisces. And it's such a beautiful opportunity for us to really get into these infinite, beautiful spiritual dimensions that exist within us. With Neptune in Pisces, I mean, you can't ask for more than that. Neptune in Pisces takes us right there. But we do have to be careful because of the glamorized manifestation of Neptune, which can be, I mean, even though Jupiter and Sag is the archetype that connects more to gurus, you can sort of fall under the illusion, if you like, when you've got a strong Neptune transit, of projecting that onto some guru type figure, and then suddenly they become God, and they just have this enormous power and control over your life, because whatever they say is what's truthful to you and what's real, and it has to be what they say and nothing else. That's a spell. Just remember that, in my opinion at least, the absolute truth resides within you, and you are the one that's going to be the one who has access to that Everything else and everybody else around you and that moves in and out of your life can be guidance points, can be assistance in, you know, in just pointing you in the right direction and things like that. But don't give that power onto another by projecting this God ideal Neptune vibration onto another human being, because they cannot live up to it. Because they are, whilst we are all an expression of divine consciousness, we are consciousness, actually. We literally are divine consciousness. We're just a fragment of the expression of that in the myriad of ways, right? So we all come from that same essence and we all return to the same essence. So therefore, we're all made of the same thing, aren't we? So we're really not that different from each other at the core levels, at least, anyway. But at the same time, we are not, when we come into the physical domain, whilst we are an expression of consciousness, we are an expression of consciousness that is evolving through very purposeful experiences. That's why you have the life that you do. You have the relationships you have. You were born where you're born. You know, all those things are chosen from your soul. So, I mean, what I'm getting at is that if we'd reached the level of, let's say, the Buddha, which just simply means the awakened one, that's what Buddha actually means, to be completely awake. Then if we have that experience of ultimate consciousness, meaning being completely awake, whilst we're here in the human form, then, you know, shit, we've totally evolved and spiritualized to the absolute highest level, really. And our role and responsibilities would be very, very different, obviously. But still, if we're in the human form, even with that level of consciousness and awareness, we still live in this 3D dimension. So we're still dealing with the same elements, the same things are still going on. So if you are unconscious, or if you are conscious, the world is still the same. It's just your relationship to it, how you respond to it, how you connect to it, how you understand it is what's different from the point of view of being completely asleep or awake. So I'll leave it there and send you all loads and loads of love and blessings, and happy new moon in Sag. I'm feeling that energy. It's kicked in already. Just feeling really positive, actually, and just really very hopeful. I was very down for a couple of weeks with all those fires and things, and very devastating, namely for nature and the wildlife. But I was watching some an amazing series with Joseph Campbell, and that just brought me back into the space that I really need to be in, especially yeah. So anyway, feeling good. Just wanted to share that, and see you guys very soon. Thank you so much for tuning in, and yeah, see you soon. Bye.